So, you work in the UK. That means you're legally entitled to paid time off. But how is it actually calculated? It can feel like a super complex puzzle, right? Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to put all the pieces together and give you the tools to really understand your rights. Let's get into it. Sound familiar? Yeah, if you've ever had that moment of just staring at your payslip, you are definitely not alone. It's something we all have, but figuring out the how and how much can be a real head scratcher. Don't worry though, by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to work it out. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll break it down into 5 simple parts. We'll start with the puzzle itself and the all-important 5.6-week rule. Then we'll dive into the specific calculations for your type of job, what happens when you start or leave, and finally, what your pay should actually include when you're on holiday. First up, let's tackle that confusion head on. Our goal here is to get you some real clarity. Okay, let's get right to the foundation of all UK holiday pay. It really all boils down to one single super important number. And that number is 5.6 weeks. This is the magic number, the statutory minimum annual leave for pretty much every worker in the UK. So if you work a standard 5-day week, that works out to 28 days. You're going to want to remember this number, because every other calculation we do today is built on top of it. So what does statutory minimum really mean? Well, think of it like a legal floor. Your company can totally offer you more paid holiday, and many do, but they can never offer you less. And this is crucial. You start earning that holiday from the very first day you start your job. Okay, that's the big picture. But now for the practical part, right? How does that 5.6 weeks actually turn into days or hours on your payslip? Well, it all depends on your work pattern, so let's break down the different formulas for different contracts. Broadly speaking, workers kind of fall into 2 main groups. First, you've got people with consistent work patterns, your fixed or part-time workers. They have a set entitlement. Then you have your irregular and 0-hours workers, where the entitlement builds up as you work. Let's look at each one. Let's start with the easiest one, full-time workers. If you work a set number of hours or days every single week, the math is nice and simple. Your annual holiday entitlement is just divided up across the year. And the calculation? Oh, it's wonderfully simple. You just take your total annual leave, we'll use this statutory 28 days as an example, and divide it by 12. That means you earn or accrue about 2.33 days of holiday for every single month you work. Okay, but what if you're part-time? No worries, you still get your 5.6 weeks of leave. The key phrase to know here is pro rata. It's just a fancy way of saying your holiday is directly proportional to the amount of time you work. And here's how that actually works in practice. If you work, say, 3 days a week, you just multiply those 3 days by 5.6, which gives you 16.8 days of paid leave per year. Or maybe you're paid by the hour. Same deal. Just multiply your weekly hours, let's say 20, by 5.6 to get your total leave in hours. Simple as that. Now for the one that can seem a bit tricky, irregular hours and 0-hours workers. For leave years starting on or after April 1st, 2024, your holiday is calculated using a very specific percentage of the hours you've actually worked. So where on earth does that percentage come from? It's not just pulled out of thin air, I promise. There's some simple logic to it. A year has 52 weeks. You take away the 5.6 weeks of holiday you're entitled to, and that leaves you with 46.4 working weeks. Your 5.6 weeks of leave, as a proportion of those working weeks, is what gives you that magic number, 12.07%. This is the number to remember if you work irregular hours, 12.07%. For every hour you work, you earn this percentage of an hour as paid leave. So let's put it into practice. Say you worked 80 hours in a pay period. You just multiply that by 0.1207. That gives you 9.656 hours of paid holiday that you've just earned. So the key thing is, your leave directly tracks the hours you've actually put in. All right, so that covers the main work patterns. But what happens when you don't work a full holiday year, because you're starting a new job or maybe leaving one? It's really just 2 sides of the same coin. When you start a job, you get a proportional slice of the annual holiday pie based on how much of the year is left to work. And when you leave, the company calculates that same slice and has to pay you for any of that holiday you've earned but haven't used yet. Let's look at a clear example for a new starter. Imagine a full-timer with 28 days of leave joins a company with 3.5 months left in the holiday year.
You'd figure out their monthly accrual rate, that's 28 divided by 12, and then multiply it by the 3.5 months they'll be working. That gives them 8.16 days of leave for the rest of that year.
And for someone who's leaving, it's a simple two-step process. First, you calculate what they've accrued so far. So, someone leaving after 6 months has earned half their annual entitlement, which is 14 days. Then, you just subtract the holiday they've already taken. In this case, they took 10 days, so they are owed payment for the remaining 4 days in their final payslip. Okay, last but definitely not least, let's talk about the money. When you're on holiday, what should your pay actually be based on? Because it's not always just your basic salary. Now, this is a really, really important takeaway. Your holiday pay should reflect what you normally earn. By law, it's calculated based on your average pay over the last 52 weeks that you actually worked. And this average must include regular extra payments like commission, bonuses, and overtime. Your holiday pay should reflect your true average pay. So, let's boil it all down. What are the key takeaways here? Number 1, everyone gets at least 5.6 weeks of paid leave. 2, if you're part-time, you get that on a pro rata basis. 3, if you work irregular hours, it's calculated using that 12.07% rate. And finally, and this is a big one, your holiday pay has to be based on your average earnings, not just your basic pay. We've gone through the rules, the numbers, the formulas. The puzzle really isn't so puzzling anymore, is it? So the only real question left is this. Go take a look at your own payslip. Are you being paid what you're owed? Because now you have the tools to find out.